being recorded, and I'm going to mute you.
Oh.
There we go. You're muted. All right. Let's begin with an opening prayer. So here we are together. We give thanks for that. Let us pray. Creator God, it is you who have made us and not we ourselves. We are dust without your breath of life. We are creatures, not creator. Yet you entrust the care of creation to us. Breathe your spirit into us that we may be faithful in the tasks you set before us through Jesus Christ, who always goes before us. Amen. I know I sent you the texts, and I failed to print out my second copy of the worship bulletin that I sent to you guys. I did two, and the second one I changed to be what I wanted, but I don't have it printed out, and I'm not going to flip through my screen here and maybe lose you guys. So I'm going to go with the first printed copy that I did, just in case you're wondering about that. But I'm gonna start with the Exodus 12 reading here that I remember hearing first when I was probably about 9 or 10 years old. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of the months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell the whole congregation of Israel that on the 10th of this month they are to take a lamb for each family, a lamb for each household. If a household is too small for a whole lamb, it shall join its closest neighbor in obtaining one. The lamb shall be divided in proportion to the number of people who eat it. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month. Then the whole assembled congregation of Israel shall slaughter it at twilight. They shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of the house in which they eat it. They shall eat the lamb that same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it, raw or boiled in water, but roast it over the fire with its head, legs, and inner organs. You shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn. Now this is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it hurriedly. It is the Passover of the Lord. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both human beings and animals. And on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you live. When I see the blood, I will pass over you, and no plague shall destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt." That's the first lesson. And that's the last plague that's visited upon Egypt before their departure. And now here, Matthew chapter 18. We'll knit them together. Jesus said, "If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the 2 of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take 1 or 2 others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen, even to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector. Truly, I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly, I tell you, if 2 of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them." And here ends the reading. I don't think I'll ever get used to hearing the echo of my voice in an empty room. It is so empty. And And relatives were asking this this weekend, what is it like preaching now on Zoom? And there's all kinds of answers that you can give, but boy, one of them now is, I don't think I've ever had to sit still to deliver anything like this, except very early on. And then I'd have a piece of paper and I just read it like I just read the texts. And so it's really difficult not to have all of you chiming in or yelling back or, groaning your unbelief or straightening me out somehow. So it's a difficult thing. First off, let me begin with Exodus. Just raise your hand if you heard this when you were a kid. Just raise your hand. Okay, so a few took a little bit longer. I first heard this when I was probably eight years old or so, maybe a little bit younger. I can't remember, but I remember being really disturbed about this. When it got to the last plague, trying to get the Pharaoh to release the people of Israel. The Hebrews, I was so concerned because I always kept thinking about, well, what if, okay, there's a provision in there. If you don't have enough money to buy a lamb, you can get together with your neighbor and the two of you can go in together and buy a lamb. But what if, in my mind, I kept thinking, what if two families couldn't afford it? Couldn't get it? What if three families couldn't afford it? What if in the end there were people left out like that? And even though in there's a provision that talks about how everybody can be a part of this, my mind just kind of wandered because I always knew of people that really struggled to make ends meet. I mean, we were one of them, but I always wondered, oh my gosh, because I know what's coming. If they don't get the blood on their posts and eat the lamb, their firstborn son is going to be killed. And I always had in my mind the Hebrews that weren't able to get it done in time. So, or maybe they forgot, so I was always concerned with that. And so in my mind's eye, I remember whenever I've heard this story, I think about the Hebrews who were wailing and grieving the loss of their firstborn because they weren't able to get the ritual done in time or afford it. And it always struck me that way. Kind of think about the pandemic that way in some ways. There's some people, a good portion of people are remaining pretty healthy. 185,000. It's very likely you won't know somebody for a long time. And we're all starting to know people that have been sick with it, some more serious than others. Some know people that have died, and especially high profile cases. And it's a real thing, but 185 out of 300 million, it can be kind of unreal. So maybe it was just 185,000 Hebrews that didn't get the blood on the door in time. And so that's where my mind goes to that, and not only that, but this text talks about how they're going to make a ritual of this. Every year on the first month, on the 10th day of the first month, we're going to reenact this. We're going to remember this night. We're going to remember the night that you didn't get the blood on the door fast enough. You're going to remember that you couldn't afford to get the lamb, and even with 5 neighbors, and you couldn't pull it together. And every year for the rest of eternity, we're going to have this ritual which you can grieve, and remember somehow the damage that was done that night. So I certainly broaden that to the Egyptians today too. What about the Egyptians? Were they all horrible people? Even to this day, we don't know much about Egypt, except for they were the ones that, got all the plagues visited on them, and finally they learned their lesson. maybe we know a little bit of geopolitical history to know better. But so I hold on to that one, and I think about the purpose of rituals on Zoom, which is all, trust me, obviously ironic. Rituals are in person. I mean, they have visceral things. They've got blood on the door. They've got blood on your hands. You've got the smell of cooking bitter herbs. You've got garlic or whatever it is that's in the air. It's here, and it's bread and it's wine and it's water. It's the smell of Christmas trees going up. It's the smell of pasta dinners being cooked. It's the smell of the sewer backing up in the basement at the wrong time. And it's a visceral experience together, right? And rituals are so important to us as human beings. We are cultural beings that rely on ritual to bind the fabric of who we are, not just in the church, but in society and everywhere. And, the ritual of putting your mask on, it's becoming a ritual, and you go out and you know who's in what denomination now, or so you think, as to who's got a mask on and who doesn't. The whole denomination of Wisconsin seems to have gotten rid of that. But which divides us all the more, who's in, who's out. And but rituals are something that bind us together. They give us hope. They give us life. They may be something that reminds us every year of the death and the loss. But what the ritual does is it brings us together to bear the weight of that. We don't do it by ourselves. It's why it's so difficult and painful to not do a pasta dinner this year. And I know that there are a number of you that are racking your minds and trying to figure out how we can pull something together so that this can be honored in some way. I mean, the first time that the community dinner has not been done in since Moses lost his shoes, And in so many ways, like I've always said, people don't come to this church for the unbelievable pasta dinner to get a meal, although it is pretty good. But what brings them back over and over again is the ritual of being in flesh together, side by side. So that's what rituals do. So Matthew, interesting text. Matthew, it's really about teaching us how to be community together. How are we together? And this is always comes up, and it almost acts like a roadmap of how to discipline each other. How this is one of the rules of community, right? And so Barbara Brown Taylor talked about an illustration of the church this way, and she says, it really is about how can we bring our grievances to each other and share them with each other, because that brings us closer. A lot of us are afraid of conflict, so we would never want to say that something had bothered us. And when we don't bring it up, at best we miss the opportunity to grow closer. And at worst, we just feed animosities and grievances and fester old wounds that just get worse and worse and worse over time. And you go looking for all the proof that you need to confirm what you already know, that that Elsie really is a difficult kid. She's not on the screen right now, thank goodness. But You know how it goes. But Barbara Brown Taylor used this one. So Joe at the church. Joe decided he's getting to know Bill pretty well, and Bill and he are chatting over coffee. Like they do, and then Bill asks if he could borrow his lawnmower because his had died. All right, I'll do it. So he says, "Oh, I'm feeling pretty good about this Bill guy. I mean, he's." Boy, he takes his coffee the same way I do, and I'm really glad he's in this community now. So he says, come on over and get my lawnmower, and he gets the lawnmower, brings it back home, and he says, I'll bring it back by the end of the week. So the end of the week comes, and you know what happens. The end of week 2 comes, and you know what happens, and the end of 3 weeks comes, and Bob's got himself a citation from the city saying, if you don't cut your grass, we're going to throw you in jail. So Bob gets on the phone and calls Bill and says, hey, is there any way, you could bring my lawnmower back over here? And Bill says, that's impossible. I don't got it anymore. Bob says, you don't have it? What do you mean you don't have it? He says, well, you gave it to me, and that was such a wonderful act. I just felt like so moved by what you did, so selfless that my neighbor asked if he could borrow it. So I thought, if it was so good for me, I'm gonna offer it to him. And he was so thankful. So actually, I don't have it anymore. Well, could you go over and get it from him? And Bill says, nah, I really can't because he backed over it with his truck. Bob is stunned. What? He backed over with his truck? He says, yeah, imagine the luck. I mean, it's just awful. And he says, Bill, it'd be good to chat with you, or Bob, it'd be good to chat with you a little bit longer, but my daughter's got Little League right now. I gotta go. I'll talk to you later. Hangs up, and Bob is sitting there stunned. So the next day he goes and knocks on the door, and Bill comes, and he says, oh, Bob, good to see you. What can I do for you? Well, I've been really bothered by, because he read Matthew 18. I've been really bothered by the fact that, you borrowed my lawnmower and then you lent it out and it got run over by a truck. I've been bothered by that. And he says, oh man, me too. And he says, so after thinking about it for a couple of days, I thought, if you give me 50% of the cost of a lawnmower, I'll throw in 50%, we'll call it good. And Bill says, whoa, it's not my lawnmower. It's your lawnmower. I don't know where you got that idea from. And he shuts the door in his face. So Bob goes and he calls a couple people from the church and goes back down there, knocks on the door again. He comes out and they can't talk sense to him. They say, it's not my lawnmower. This is the lawnmower that it could have been from the lending library. But no, it was from Bob. And so eventually he shuts the door on all 3 of them. Shuts the door right in their face. And they're just sick. They're just sick about it. So they gather everybody up through email. This is before COVID. And the whole church assembly comes together and they go out on the front lawn of Bob or Bill, and they knock on the door and he's not answering. He's drawn the curtains. The Venetian blinds are just all closed up, and they're out there chanting, they're singing Kumbaya, and they've got a little portable piano to play for Vicky, and everything's going just great. And the Preußes show up and they start putting their flute and clarinet together, and it's just a wonderful time on the front lawn. They know that Bill's not going to come out and look at them and talk to them, so they knew that ahead of time. So everybody made their own signs from the church. They made their own signs, and the signs say stuff like, come on, Bill, we forgive you. Don't worry about it. It's just a lawnmower. We want you back. This is just ridiculous. Let it go. We've let it go already. It's not worth ruining a relationship and missing out on the chance to be together over a lawnmower. We've already taken up a collection. We've got enough lawnmowers to go around many times over in this community. It's already been replaced. Please come out. And Bill sees and he keeps hearing the songs and he's weeping because of the beauty of the songs. And Bob looks and he sees Bill open the Venetian blind ever so small, and he looks out with his little eye and closes it, and he says, he looked, he saw it, he took the bait. Finally, he'll be back in our community. This will be great. And sure enough, the door opens and Bill is weeping. And he's written a check for 4 lawnmowers and said, I'm so sorry, what was I thinking? And everybody, they get together and they do a called dance, and the banjos show up, and it's better than you've ever seen in your life. And they go back to being the community of faith. And the people of God say, right. Maybe so, maybe not. But the truth of the matter is, we would never know because we've never done it. We've never, ever done it. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that, oh boy, it could turn out that way, but I don't even know where it would go. Instead, what we do as a community of faith is we close our eyes to the things that hurt us, as though it really doesn't. And that's what it's going to take to keep a relationship going, an honest and real, life-affirming, forgiving relationship. We just close our eyes to the things that hurt. And unlike children, if Elsie and Lou get into a brawl in the kitchen right now, there's going to be screaming and bloodletting. It's going to be bad. And it might not be over anything other than a pancake that was spilled, fallen on the floor. And they'll scream. If you're like our kids would howl, they'd pull hair. It would be awful until you got to the worst of all, which was the silent treatment. And if the silent treatment went long enough, amnesia would set in. And they would totally forget, and they would start playing another game. And the relationship would go on. But the important thing is they let out a cry and they threw a fit, and they leveled their complaint, and their injustice was known, and it's done. But the older we get, the more we're told, and we learn to live in a culture that says, don't get excited. If you get hurt, don't show that you've been hurt, because that would be vulnerable. And we just go on as if. And so we end up having pretty toxic relationships in communities. And this is a method again that helps us to work against that. To keep it clear, keep it clean. It's going to be painful. It's going to be painful anyway. But here's the thing that we always miss. This isn't just a rule to figure out how to discipline an unruly member. It's a way to keep relationships above all other things, because if they don't listen to one person, and the person that is supposed to be bringing it up is the one that was offended. I mean, imagine that. They're the ones offended, and they've got to do the work. Yep, that's right. So if they don't listen to the one, you bring back another. If they don't listen to two, bring back the whole assembly. If they don't listen to the whole assembly, what do? You treat them like Gentiles and tax collectors. End of story, right? But the hook here is this. How does Jesus teach? How does Jesus treat tax collectors and Gentiles? And how does Jesus instruct us to treat tax collectors and Gentiles? If all else fails, let them come back and stir the pasta sauce. Let them bring their banjo. You start again, but you make it real. So we have rituals, and it's getting nice and long. And actually, as much as Zoom here is not a physical thing, in a kind of a unbelievable way, this has become a ritual. You know, it's a Sunday morning, and you know, we don't know what's going to happen. Just like when we're physically together, are we going to have heat? Are we going to have air conditioning? Are we going to have? What are we going to have? And what I do know is you are going to be here, and what makes the ritual is the relationship in the community. And there you are, you know, like Richard Rohr says, you know, bearing the weight of both sorrow and of glory. You know, we celebrate and we mourn together. And I really want to do it in person because that's who we are as humans. I've got a whole lot more to say about that, but I'm gonna let it go because I'm done with this ritual. And I hope it was healing and helpful and challenging, because that's what it is. Challenge to us all. Offerings. Does anybody have an offering they'd like to offer up? Anybody have an offering? You can unmute yourself. I think my speaker system quit working. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't hear that.
I have a poem I could read. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So we were at a wedding last weekend for my cousin, and I read a poem by Maya Angelou in the wedding, and it's really pretty. I will read it to you. It's short. It's by Maya Angelou, and it's called "Touched by an Angel." We, unaccustomed to courage, exiles from delight, live coiled in shells of loneliness until love leaves its high holy temple and comes into our sight to liberate us into life. Love arrives, and in its train come ecstasies, old memories of pleasure, ancient histories of pain. Yet, if we are bold, love strikes away the chains of fear from our souls. We are weaned from our timidity. In the flush of love's light, we dare be brave, and suddenly we see that love costs all we are and will ever be, and love alone will set us free. That's it.
Oh, that was great. It should be in 1 Corinthians.
Yeah.
That's great. Another hand. Okay, you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Unmuted.
Yeah,
Are we
we're all muted,
unmuted?
yes.
Yeah, this has been a kind of a trying week for me of acceptance of our granddaughters having the
COVID.
The
Coronavirus.
virus, and it brought from me tears, and it also brought for me a closer view of our family, and it was that truly that we moment that you look for in families when things are not going so well, and it was having the message on the phone from my granddaughter. She was upbeat. It was a lot harder on her grandpa and mom, the mother of Ellie, and it was a learning lesson in family and in a spiritual connection to one another. So we just pray for the best, and that's what Ellie was doing too. She probably has known this for months because she works in the hospital, and so maybe it wasn't as startling for her as for Grandpa and her mother. So, but I guess that's what acceptance is accept the will of God and work still as a community of and family. If that'll pass.
Okay. Anybody else? Anyone else? All right, I have for the prayers of the people this morning, got a hymn that Tessa sent to us by way of YouTube, a number of months ago now, that I'd like to play. So I'm going to try to share my screen, and I'm going to do my best to do it well, and you can hear it. Let's see here. I'm going to share. Here we go. And I'm hoping you can hear. You can give me a thumbs up if you can hear.
Spirit, pour out and flood this city. Heaven, come down and shake the walls. Fill us, Lord, the world is waiting. Father, let your kingdom come. Come restore generations of desolation. Bind up the poor and broken heart. Plant and sow, till and grow what time is ravaged. Break down the walls of race and war. Spirit, pour out and flood this city. Heaven, come down and shake the walls. Fill us, Lord, the world is waiting. Father, let your kingdom come. God, receive peace and welfare for our city. Prosper, redeem her as your own. That all would see your glory here in greater measure. Through us, your church, your kingdom come. Spirit, pour out and flood this city. Heaven, come down and shake the walls. Fill us, Lord, the world is waiting. Father, let your kingdom come. Spirit, pour out and flood this city. Heaven, come down and shake the walls. Fill us, Lord, the world is waiting. Father, let your kingdom come. You are the God who builds. You are the one who saves. You are the God who prospers. Evil has no claim. You are the God who builds. You are the one who saves. You are the God who prospers. Fervently we pray.
I'm going to do my best now to, I hope it shut off and it's not going to keep going. One thing I want to do, you can hear me, can't you? Yep. So Brianna and her husband and children are done with our basement, and they were able to move back into an apartment together with their children. And so they made this for us as a thank you. They were so happy that they could have a space. And of course, you know, we kept thinking, oh boy, it's what a horrible thing to have to live in a church basement, you know, but it was really such a welcome help to them. So I'm glad we could be a part of that, even from a distance. And John and all of those that helped to bring things together, you know, Pam and Julie and Edie and everybody that made it possible to happen, and dehumidifiers and cleaning. Thank you so much. Finally, it feels really good to be able to have used that space for what we intended it to be, and it really was a blessing. Other things. I'm really needing prayers for our nephew, a number of nephews, and with mental illness, and trying to get back on track, you know, to healing and find what's the way forward for people who have their brains not working the way they should. It's such a difficult thing in our society and most societies. You know, if somebody's liver wasn't working, we'd all bring a hot dish. But if their brain skips a beat or doesn't function properly, we tend to isolate. If we're the ones that are suffering with it, or if we're the ones that can actually bring help. So bring some prayers. And we'll pray for your granddaughter, Ellie, with COVID, and all those suffering with COVID, and those that are first responders and caregivers and everybody. We continue on. Thank you for this ritual, Sunday morning ritual of being together. It makes all the difference to me, I know. But hear a blessing. I was able to sneak off and get the second copy, my addended copy of the bulletin, where I changed some of the blessings and the prayers. And so receive a blessing. Go into the world proclaiming through your lives the self-giving love of Jesus Christ, who became poor for our sakes. Through the power of the Spirit and love of God, may you serve others as those serving Christ. Amen. I put a couple of announcements on the bottom there. Tech study, 10 a.m. on Tuesday. And the notice about the family that has moved out. And before we go into breakout groups, just wanted to bring two questions to you guys, and from our council meeting and virtual, everything's virtual council meeting and virtual mutual ministry meeting. And the one would be, and you can give a thumbs up if it's okay. If you'd like to talk to this question and give your opinion verbally, you're welcome to do that too. You'll just have to unmute yourself. But first question is this: would you like to have an in-person, socially distanced gathering on the lawn for worship once this fall? Would you like to do that? You can say yes or no, but just don't say no. Just if you'd like to do it, put your thumb up. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. About 9 people, and the ones that don't have a video where I can see your thumb, you don't get to vote. No. I think what we're going to do is, given the fact that we like to have some people come together, I think we'll do that, and we'll still Zoom it. It'll still be a live Zoom. But those that would like to come together for that would be welcome to it. And we'll meet out on the front lawn of the church. We'll work out a date. I know that Emmanuel Mennonite is working at this very moment to do the exact same thing. And I think they're choosing next week to do it. So what I would like to do is I'd like to see how it works for them and see if we can work out the bugs that they come up with. And so we'll let them be the guinea pigs, and then we'll go from there. But it'll most likely be the third weekend of September or something like that. If it's inclement weather, we'll have to work that out. Does that work for everybody? I am